President Biden calling for new gun control measures after a mass shooting in Sacramento left 6 people dead. The president pushing for several new moves in a statement. Quote, "We also continue to call on Congress to act, ban ghost guns, require background checks for all gun sales, ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, repeal gun manufacturers' immunity from liability." These are just a few of the steps Congress urgently needs to take to save lives. In the meantime, back to that shooting, a second suspect has been arrested today in connection with that. Let's bring in former Georgia Congressman and NRA board member Bob Barr to talk a little bit more about all of this. Thank you, first of all, for joining us.
Certainly.
So some of the initiatives that I just went through there that President Biden is calling for, your thoughts on that?
None of these have anything whatsoever to do with the criminal shootings in Sacramento last weekend. It has nothing to do with manufacturer liability. It has nothing to do with a lawfully purchased firearm. It has nothing to do with what type of firearm. It has everything to do, Heather, with criminal behavior. And that is a function of local government to do a better job of cracking down on criminal behavior in their community.
And by that, you mean if someone commits a crime, that these DAs don't just, turn a blind eye and let them back out on the street.
That is an important part of the equation. If, in fact, you have these Soros-type prosecutors and even sheriffs now in communities across the country, especially in California, who view their job as being community organizers and social workers rather than as law enforcement, then you're going to continue to have problems like this. What we saw in Sacramento the other evening was a fight that got out of hand by individuals, I suspect, who had no lawful right to own those firearms. We know that at least one of them was stolen, which has nothing to do with background checks, which President Biden seems to not understand at all.
Yeah, and doesn't California have some of the strictest gun control laws in the country already?
California does, and typical of states or municipalities that have very, very strict gun control laws, whenever there is a criminal incident involving a firearm, their immediate reaction is not to say we need to do a better job of enforcing the laws on the books. No, their immediate reaction is to say we need to keep firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, allowing law-abiding citizens to protect themselves when there's been across the country a lot of law enforcement have actually left the streets and left that profession because they've been treated so poorly by, this administration and by others. But yet, I'm trying to remember President Biden just a couple weeks ago when he announced his budget, he did try to say, Democrats are not for defunding the police, and he's trying to put more money back to that initiative. Do you believe him?
Well, I believe that he said what he said.
Right.
It's difficult to determine whether he actually understands what he says or what he means by it. But this is primarily not a federal issue. This is a problem that has to be addressed, if it's going to be addressed at all, by local and state officials. And in California, for example, Governor Newsom, the same as President Biden, when there's a criminal shooting, he immediately takes to the airwaves and says, oh, we need more gun control. That is, we need to make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to own a firearm or to possess one. It has nothing to do with the reality. That's where things need to be fixed at the local and state level and do a better job of enforcing the laws already on the books, Heather.
Yeah, it does always seem to be the knee-jerk reaction that they go to whenever a tragic incident happens. But, funding the police, allowing our law enforcement to do their jobs, holding criminals accountable, and allowing, law-abiding citizens to protect themselves seems like all of that would make a lot of common sense when it comes to, keeping our communities safe. In the meantime, I want to ask you about this specifically in Georgia, though. Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp is set to sign a state bill, which Republicans say would strengthen Second Amendment rights. Kemp posting, quote, "I appreciate the House and Senate for their hard work to get constitutional carry over the finish line. Law-abiding Georgians deserve to ensure they can protect themselves and their families, and this legislation strengthens that God-given right." Your thoughts?
It is a God-given right, and our Second Amendment, as with other provisions in our Constitution and specifically in the Bill of Rights, are designed to ensure that government does not infringe these God-given rights, such as the right to petition your government, such as the right to speak your mind, and most importantly, such as the right to protect oneself and one's family by the best means possible, and ultimately that is with a firearm. That was the case back in the 18th century, and it's the case today.
All right. Congressman Barr, thank you very much for joining us. Always great to speak with you.
My pleasure.